Hi, today I'd like to talk with you a little bit about the concept of the legislature placing caps on medical malpractice cases. Uh, over the over the more than 20 years that I've been working in this field, we've seen many attempts by the legislature to do just that. It is usually framed along the lines of if you were injured in a medical malpractice um, uh, event, then you are entitled to have your bills paid, but get no more than X amount of dollars for the effects of your injuries on your life. And the cap that we've seen most often proposed is a cap of $250,000 or 250,000. Now, out of context, I can understand how this might make a lot of sense. But in context, I think you'll understand that it does not. So in order to talk about that, I'd like to go over briefly a case that I just read about. I don't know about the merits of this case or really much of the detail. I just know what I've read. And this is the case of Kalia Shaw. Kalia was a young lady in Atlanta who was taking a medication for depression and started to have some really kind of awful symptoms that ended up hospitalizing her. Essentially, her skin started breaking out in blisters all over her body, and she is the victim of a syndrome called Stevens-Johnson syndrome, which is very rare, but is triggered quite often by either an adverse allergic reaction to a medication or an overdose of medication. And in Kalia's case, she is alleging that the pharmacy misfilled her prescription and effectively overdosed her on her antidepressant medication, which then resulted in this syndrome. Um, Essentially, he had to be placed into a medicated 5-week coma during the period where all of her skin essentially melted off of her body. It will not come back. There is not a cure for this. She will always be burned and scarred. She is slowly losing her vision. Her sweat glands no longer exist. Her fingernails will never grow back. Her life is inexorably altered, and not, of course, in a good way. To cap damages for someone like this, if there is negligence found at $250,000, is just a terrible outcome and completely unjust. Um, the errors in one of the things that was highlighted in the article that I read about this is that medication errors have jumped from 16,689 reported in 2010 to more than 93,000 reported in 2016. This is an increase of over 450%. Part of that increase is simply because there are more efficient ways to report these, but this is still a voluntary reporting set of numbers. In other words, certainly there are more cases than what have been reported. And medical errors, a study in 2016 found, are now the third leading cause of death in the United States. So when we see corporations and insurance companies pushing to have limits on medical malpractice cases, I think you can understand why that's very unfair. These are what they're really attacking here are the most vulnerable people. We can't make our own decisions about medical care. We follow doctors' advice, and we put ourselves in the hands of doctors, for our own well-being. And there, but for the grace of God, go all of us at some point in our lives. And if a doctor cannot do their job, or if a pharmacy cannot do their job in a non-negligent manner, and it results in harm, it's important that people have the ability to collect on all of the harms that are given them, or that have been inflicted upon them under these types of circumstances. So there you have it. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope this helps inform your opinion.